Hello and happy new year, Wahlburgers. Today we are going to start looking at one of my favorite topics that we look at, the Bill of Rights. So this is really going to answer the question I know I've asked several times throughout class of what rights do you have? Okay. So this will include the packet that I handed out in class. There's going to be a bunch of different images that I want you to be aware of what they represent. They are going to help you, well, study for the quiz next week, but also for the game that you guys are going to be playing the next couple of days as well. So here, I'm probably going to go through these pretty briefly because you'll have the ability to actually, pause this and write things down if you didn't catch this from class the other day. So let's begin. When we talk about the Bill of Rights, we are looking at typically the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. There are a few that we're going to throw in there as well, because I think they are important. But really, it's the first 10 that motivate the states to start ratifying the Constitution. It makes those anti-federalists a little bit happier. So they ratify the Constitution, and we have the government that we have today. So first one, well, the First Amendment. I believe I'm going clockwise around here. The first, there we go. The top left there, we have an image of a gentleman holding a newspaper, a girl holding a phone, their t-shirts. We're going to label that as freedom of expression. Really, when we look at the First Amendment, they cover a couple of things. Talk about speech, which could be what you say. Freedom of the press. So newspapers are allowed to criticize the government without the government interfering. And that's also now included, like, what do you wear as an expression. Moving along, you have freedom of religion. The government cannot force you to practice a certain religion, or no. I mean, you have the freedom to practice no religion if that is what you believe. And finally, we have freedom of assembly, that you are able to group together however you would like without government interference. Second Amendment, I think most of us are familiar with this one. The right to bear arms. We're going to phrase it as the right to own weapons. And we can dig into the specifics about what that means, but generally, the Second Amendment is interpreted to mean that you have the right to own weapons. Third Amendment. This is one that we don't talk about a whole lot because it doesn't really apply anymore. But you do not have to house soldiers in your house. This comes back to before the Revolution, when the British government was forcing the colonists to keep British soldiers in their homes. This hasn't been applied anyway that I'm aware of in U.S. history, but it's one of those weird holdovers there. All right, the Fourth Amendment, we're going to dig into some more complicated things here. A couple of things. Number one, there are no unreasonable searches. The police are not supposed to just search you just because you look suspicious. They are supposed to get your approval there. Similarly, to search your stuff, they need a valid search warrant. The police have to be very specific with what they are looking for, where they are looking for it, and then a judge needs to agree with them and sign off on that. Hey, let me real quick make just a big point here. I am not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination. So while I'm saying the general things that the different amendments cover, I am sure there are much more legalese issues that are involved. So this does not like get you off the hook for anything down the road. And you could be like, my eighth grade social studies teacher said I could do. No, there's legalities here. So that's my disclaimer. All right, Fifth Amendment. Several things here. And again, I'm going clockwise. So first, no double jeopardy. What that means is you can't be tried for the same crime twice. So if I am arrested for, let's just go ahead and say murder, there's a murder trial against me. and I am found innocent, they cannot try me for that murder again. That doesn't mean I can like go and on a murder spree and never get caught. No, you can't be tried for that same crime twice. You have the right to keep private property. That if the government wants to take your property, they need to compensate you appropriately. So if you have a house and they want to build a highway on that land, they need to pay you an appropriate amount of money, otherwise known as eminent domain. Due process of law. Your life, liberty, or property cannot be taken away without your due process of law. So they can't just come in, take your stuff. There is a proper procedure that has to happen before you can be punished in any way. And finally, you do not need to testify against yourself. Your right to remain silent. All right, the Sixth Amendment. You have the right to a speedy and public trial. Now, sometimes we see trials dragging out for a long, long time. Again, a lawyer could probably answer that question better than I can. But it should also be public. Your jury, which is actually for a criminal case guaranteed in the actual Constitution, but the jury needs to be unbiased. So again, if I'm on trial for a murder case, my jury should not be a whole bunch of students that I failed. They might be slightly biased against me. If you are accused of a crime, the witness must testify, or you can make that witness testify there. And then finally, you have a right to an attorney. All right, Seventh Amendment, you don't have anything in your notes about that, but I do want you to be aware of that. So maybe somewhere in the corners or the margins. But the Seventh Amendment, you have the right to a jury in a civil case in cases larger than $20. Oops, that should be then $20. So a civil case is not a criminal case. A criminal case is where someone breaks the law. A civil case is maybe not so much someone broke the law, but someone was maybe negligent. I guess the more famous case would be the most famous example would be if I own a ladder company and you bought one of my ladders and one of the rungs broke and you broke your leg. Well, you would see me that would be a civil case. Not like I really broke the law, but yeah. So that one exists. We're not going to dig into that a whole lot, and I don't really have a fun picture for it either. I apologize. All right, your Eighth Amendment rights. First, no cruel or unusual punishments. The punishment should fit the crime somewhat. So if I'm littering, I shouldn't be, sentenced to life in prison there, or prison time really. And reasonable bail and fines. So bail is the amount of money that the judge can set to let you wait for your trial at home instead of waiting in prison. That should be reasonable. It shouldn't be too much. So again, if I'm doing littering, it shouldn't necessarily be millions and millions of dollars that I'm paying to wait for my trial at home. Same with fines. Again, Ninth and Tenth Amendments, they're not going to have any fun pictures here, but I want you to be aware of them. The Ninth Amendment basically says, hey, there are too many rights for us to list. And so just because it's not in the Bill of Rights doesn't mean you don't have that right. So right now, I guess we could say like the right to an education. Is that a right? Well, it's not in the Bill of Rights anywhere. I think we generally assume that, you do have a right to an education. So that would fall under the Ninth Amendment. 10th Amendment, powers not given to the government in the Constitution belong to the states or to the people. So again, I'll use education as an example. Nowhere in the Constitution does the government have the power to do anything about education. So that power belongs to the state. It's the states that decide what is taught and all that stuff. All right. So now we're going to skip ahead to a couple of the other amendments that I want you to be aware of. Because 11 and 12, we don't need to know them, at least not for our purposes today. But the 13th comes right after the Civil War, ending slavery. Slavery is abolished, except for punishment of a crime. And we see that kind of playing out today in that prisoners are doing labor for very, very cheap, if any money. Um, a bit of a contentious issue, even still to this day. But ultimately, 13th is slavery. The 14th Amendment talks about equality under the law. Now, when you look at the amendment itself, it specifically says, uses the word race, saying that, just because of color of your skin, your rights aren't treated differently. When this was written, women were specifically kept out of the wording there, and some people argue that no, there should be a specific amendment for equality under law regardless of sex. Some lawyers have successfully used the 14th Amendment to make rules apply to women equally to men. Um, just a fun factoid there. But yeah, so equality under law. Everyone is treated equally under the law. 15th Amendment, the final of our Reconstruction, or the time after the Civil War amendments, but the right to vote regardless of race. And finally, last one we're going to look at here is the 19th. Sorry, it's not the last one. 19th Amendment deals with the right to vote as well, but this is regardless of sex. So in 1920, women got the right to vote by the 19th Amendment. Again, we're going to jump ahead several amendments here to the 26th. This is the right to vote at the age of 18. This comes out right after or during the Vietnam War, when a lot of states had the voting age to be 21. But as some of you might know, and some of our young men should probably know soon enough, that once you turn 18, you are required to sign up for the selective service, that there could be a draft for the military. And the argument was, hey, if you are able to serve in the military at the age of 18, should you not also have the right to pick those leaders that might send you into war? So that's where that is. So there we are. Those are the Bill of Rights that we're going to be concerned with in this class. And what you all are going to be doing is playing this game. Do I have a right? It is your job to figure out what your constitutional rights are and if they apply in certain cases. So let's play the game there in a moment. But otherwise, yeah, good luck with that.